Welcome to Bacademia, a podcast so educational two professors could be hosting it. Hi, I'm Dr. Danielle Dick-McGew, and joining me is Dr. Bill Henneman. Welcome. Today we have a special guest with us, Sadé Barfield, and she is the director of the UNI speech team. She teaches a variety of courses in the Department of Communication and Media, including group communication and public speaking. Sadé, is there anything else you'd like to share about yourself?
Yes, I am a level 39 Pokemon Go trainer. I'm a Virgo, and I just love to have a good time.
Yay!
Wow.
That's awesome. We are in the presence of a Pokemon Go expert. So
Greatness.
yeah, it is an honor to have you with us today. So Sadé, I know that you're new to the Bachelor franchise, right?
Yes, I've recently immigrated to Bachelor Nation.
Welcome. I know a couple of months ago, I saw a post. You said that you wanted to give The Bachelor a watch, but you didn't want to waste your time. So you wanted to know which season had the most handsome bachelor. You know, was there a sickly Jon Snow or a Weapon X Wolverine, said Tatum Tanning? So I think that Channing Tatum, reverse that.
Fine.
I mean, you don't have to say his name, right? You can just admire, right?
Yeah.
So
how would you describe Clare and the men on Clare's season? You got any good comparisons for us here?
Well, I've been seeing a lot of, before I ever watched this season of The Bachelor, I've been seeing all of the commercials, which make her look absolutely unhinged. And so my immediate thought was like, who is this woman and how do I get to know her? Because usually it's just like a lady who respects herself. They're like, she's out of control. And so I was curious to see how she would be. And she seems like self-possessed, but just like deeply sad. And I was not ready for that. Over the summer, I read Glennon Doyle's Untamed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just about how so many terrible things are happening in the world because of the way that people relate or connect to themselves. They're so desperate for love. And that was like what I got from Clare, where I'm like, oh, I'm sure like professionally you're really great, but I feel like interpersonally there's been some serious damage done. Like you look at it and you're like, oh, someone is definitely like an axe has stolen your social security number. Like that is for sure happened to you.
Yeah, so my husband Ryan, he just catches glances of it and he's like, Danielle, I just, is she well? And I was like, Ryan, like you're married to me. No one's like, hey, Danielle, she's really normal. So I was like, she has potential, Ryan. So each week we like to have, like I say this like we've been doing it for years.
Hey, this is episode 4. We're freaking pros. We're basically the Clares of podcasting now. We're old. God knows if people aren't listening now, we're done.
That you bet.
I don't really believe that, by the way. Before we get hate mail, I don't believe that Claire's old.
Yeah, so we have like a weekly question, and this week is any good blind date stories?
Yes. So there was like a brief period when I was finishing undergrad and then the beginning of grad school where I decided, I'm like, oh, I've never really dated. And so that's something I should do. Like that should be like, I thought of it as like a resume line item thing. I'm like, to be better, if I'm going to have a relationship in the future, I should probably try this out. Hated it. It was just really weird and awful. And one of the worst dates, I'm a nice young man from Waterloo, Iowa. We went to a movie, which was a terrible movie. And
What movie?
it was like Transylvania or something to that effect. It was like a
Cartoon?
horror comedy.
Oh.
So I'm like, I thought that would be fun. We went to the Crossroads Theater in Waterloo that has like love seats.
Yes.
Which I was unprepared for. And so like we get into the theater and he's like, oh, let's go sit in the back. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And then it was like love seats. I'm like, this is intimate. I was not prepared. And then after the movie, I think we went back to my place. We were watching like Mythbusters, but I really just wanted him to leave.
Ooh.
And he did not want to leave. So I was just like, actually, I'm meeting friends later. You got to go. And so then I just like, I had to like leave my home to end the date. So yeah, that was probably the worst blind date.
Yeah, most dates that end with Mythbusters aren't like headed anywhere good.
But then once you're married, that's like a pretty good night. It's like we
Oh,
got
yeah.
home, we laid in bed, we watched Mythbusters. Beautiful.
How about you, Bill? Any
Well,
bad?
first off, I think we've all had that experience where we have like been on a date and you've been somewhere and you're trying to hint that it's like not going well. Like you're in a spot where you can't leave, they need to go, and they're just not getting the hint. And I would say if you've never been in that position, you were probably on the other side of that position and you weren't catching the hints. When I lived in Ireland, I went on a blind date with a girl, and I'll make this as PG as possible because my mom listens to this. Hi, Mom. And we went out and we had drinks, and I was like, oh, she seems nice. And, you know, we went to a dance club. She wanted to dance. And at some point she got drunk enough that she like went in to kiss me, and then she bit my neck. And I'm not like a nibble, like a full on vampire. I'm going to take your soul out of the side of your neck. Bite. And I just left, like, and I was too drunk to drive, and I was in Ireland, so I didn't have a driver's license anyways. So I just kind of stumbled back to my apartment and woke up, and I still am not sure, like, because I don't have anyone to confirm how bad the bite was, but I still wake up sometimes and like, did I really get bit that hard? But I did have bruises on my neck from it. So if you're wondering what kinks I have, that is not one. I do not want you to try to sever my artery in my neck.
Oh,
Jugular. That's the
you might feel different if you read some of the vampire novels that I am into. No, I'm just joking. You know, I was trying to think about this. I don't know if I've ever gone on a blind date.
I don't know if you're ever going to top the story from last week about the box.
No, I mean, I have a really bad date story. Long story short, he left me at Perkins and I had to call my friends to come pick me up.
Did he like actively leave you? Was he like, I'm out? Or was it like, I have to go get something in my car and you're eating your pie?
So it was someone that I was taking a class with, and you know, he kind of asked me out after class one time, and I'm like, sure. And took me to Perkins, and which is fine. I like breakfast for dinner. But so I was raised Mormon, which makes me a bit of an anomaly. How do you say that word? In Iowa. But so as we were at dinner, we had started dinner after I went to this thing, it's called seminary, but it was like a Bible study right before. And he was like asking me, you know, about it. And I told him that I was Mormon, and he told me I was going to hell. And then he left. And I called my friend and I got a ride home.
Wow.
And class was a little awkward after that. So college was a little rough when it came to dating. Yeah, so you know, but no blind dates. I mean I sort of knew I'm going in.
You thought you knew him.
Thought I knew him.
Yeah.
I thought I knew him.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a bummer. He's kind of handsome. Clearly a jerk. But yeah, so if y'all had to describe this week's episode in one word, how would you describe it?
Vulnerable.
That's good.
Blow up, explosion, something like that.
Now I just have your words in my head and I can't think of anything. Milestones. That would be, I think, a lot of milestones for Matt. So, yeah, so this episode really came in swinging. You know, immediately I was kind of surprised. I didn't know that we were going to get to the blow up line so early in the episode. But so immediately Claire's in the hot seat with Chris Harrison. He's like all out of breath. Like, what was he running from? Like,
that I said that to Elaine. I was like, is he that out of shape? He's like, I gotta talk about this. I move this chair.
I was like, things must have been wild on the Bachelorette set because Chris Harrison was hustling and then he cursed. So was the blow up as dramatic as you all expected, given the lead up that we are getting, you know, in all the promos and stuff?
Yeah, I think it was pretty dramatic. I think some of the problem was that everybody knew kind of what was going to happen. And so that took away some of the drama. But the fact that basically she was just like, I'm done. And he was like, okay. And then they just kind of pivoted. I thought that was pretty dramatic.
How about you, Sadé? As a new Bachelorette watcher, were you stunned?
Well, that was the thing where I'm like, I'm guessing this isn't normal, but I don't know, 2020, nothing can shock me anymore. Like, the world is bananas right now.
That is true. It's the season 2020 needed.
Yeah, I was like surprised because I'm like, well, I don't understand. Like, how long have they actually been there? So it's like, if this has happened within a month, I guess you could know, like in a couple of weeks.
No, I think it's like 6 days, maybe. I was trying to add it up last night, and I'm like, it's got to only be max a week that this has gone down in.
Okay, in that case, yeah, 6 days. Why even have the season? But at the same time, if the function of the show is for her to find love, I can't be mad or disappointed in that, because really that is like the outrage. You did this out of order. I'm like, I don't know. You gotta chill.
So let's talk about this moment that Chris Harrison comes in and tells the guys that there's not going to be a cocktail party and then pulls Dale aside. What were y'all thinking?
Well, I was surprised that the disappointment makes sense that the guys were like, there's no cocktail party, but that was also very like debutante ball to me, that a bunch of adults were just like, there's no cocktail party? How dare? Like, really?
Connie, last week's guest, sent me an email and was like, you realize Dale had no idea that he was just going on, like he was going on this like basically make or break. He thought it was just a one night kind of, hey, we're going to take you out. And so I thought it was kind of interesting that they he thought it was just a single person date, right? Like what do I want to say? An individual date.
Yeah.
I don't think he understood like the gravity of the situation. And like, I thought a little bit, I felt bad for the guys because like, so essentially, I guess so her and Dale go out. Let's say it doesn't work. She says, I love you. And Dale's like, and I think you are interesting. Right. And then like, so does she come back? Like, I think they were trying to see if like, should we let the guys go while they were on the phone with Tayshia? Like, hey, stand by.
Well, it's like, yeah. I think that like one of the things that made the show so tense for me as a watcher was actually that we had more knowledge of what was going on as viewers than the people in the show, right? We kind of had this omniscient, how do you say omniscient? Sorry, view where like we could see that, oh no, like they're gonna do something, like Dale's about to do something serious and Dale don't know yet, you know? And so I think that part of what made me anxious is I was like, oh gosh, you know, Dale's gonna have to propose. You know? So yeah, I don't know. So let's talk about the dinner date then.
I will say, I feel like the election being drug out for a year or however long it's been going on, like led to my anxiety too. It's like, I'm at the point where it's like, I can't take any more surprises. It's like, then I was watching that and I was like, oh God, Dale, that's their dinner.
I
When
think
I found out, oh God.
What's that, Sade?
I was
Sorry.
gonna say, when I realized the episodes were an hour and 25 minutes long, I'm like, how do y'all do this every week? This is exhausting.
We have priorities. I mean, it's important work. So yeah. So their dinner date.
Yeah.
One, her dress was stunning. That red dress. Wow. But so what do you think about their conversation?
So I'll start. So I think so I was trying to think at this point, they're on what, like their fourth date, like maybe we'll say this is their fourth date. I felt like they're getting a little more appropriate with how much they're disclosing. However, they've only seen each other for a grand total of like 6 or 7 hours maybe, because it's not like I've had friends who have met somebody and they've spent like 5 days nonstop with them. And then they were like, I think this might be the person I'm going to marry. And it's like, well, you can probably get a sense. But they also didn't propose to him the next day. It's like they had 5 or 6 more months that they were together or whatever. I feel like they're going through the milestones really quick in the disclosure. I also thought it was interesting that she's telling him these very deep things about her family. And he's like, what are your parents' names again? like he clearly hadn't. Yeah. So it's a little bit out of order, but they both seem kind of into it. So
I didn't trust Dale because there was a lot of like mirroring and his details that then matched hers, like the hitchhiking thing. Where I'm like,
believe
are
it?
your parents even the same age? That like, were people still hitchhiking in like the 80s?
I think that a lot of, Connie in her email to us, she was pretty suspicious of this hitchhiking story too. So, I do think that, people are like, what's the probability that both your parents hitchhiked?
yeah, I don't know.
Maybe it's just fate,
So there is some research that people are, they tell fibs when they first meet. And then it kind of comes out in the wash. And, after you really get to like somebody, they'll be like, well, you told me this. It's like, yeah, well, I just really wanted to impress you. And then it kind of becomes a sweet story. I think the problem is that they're recorded. And so it looks a lot worse, or like you think about, think of a food that your spouse or significant other loves and you really don't like it, but for the first like 2 years of your relationship, you're like, no, I love olives on my pizza. And then you just kind of picked them off. And then one day you were finally like, I can't take this shit no more. I don't like olives. I'm not getting them on my half. Like stuff like that, I think happens all the time. The problem is it's not recorded. And
I'm like so curious now. I'm like trying to think about my own relationship and I'm like what are my olives, we'll have to dig deep into that this weekend, Ryan and I.
Or like TV shows. I feel like people fake like they like a sport or they like a TV show. And then it's like they hit a point where they realize the person's not leaving just because they don't like their TV show. And they're like, I'm out. I'm not watching this TV. I'm not watching The Real Housewives of Atlanta anymore. I'm done.
Oh, that show's it's so good though.
To be fair, that was probably Elaine to me because that's the type of TV I like, and she's not into some of that stuff.
So one of the questions that I had for Bill is like, they did spend a lot of time talking about their own parents' love stories, and I know that a common thing, for example, at wedding ceremonies to say how long, particularly if the people that are getting married, both of their parents are still married, they'll say, you know, like between the two of these people, they have 60 years of marriage, you know, under their belt. And so like one of my questions is how much does someone's parents' relationships impact the way that they think about relationships?
Yeah, so by and large, we learn our interaction patterns from our parents. And so your parents have a pretty big impact on how you demonstrate love, how you think about love, what you define as love. And that's not to say that later on in your life, you don't get more experience and that can change, and who you date and how they treat you and what other models you have. But for your first 12 years of your life, probably the majority of what you understand marriage and relationships to be is going to be modeled by who your caretakers are. So not just your parents, if you live with your aunt and uncle, or and so that, I mean, it does have a pretty big impact on you. It's kind of the idea of like, if you build a house, it's really, and you want to change something with the house, it's very hard to just flatten the house and rebuild a new one. It's very expensive. You're more likely to add a room on, change the paint, and that's kind of, you know, you build it, but then you can change things.
It's an interesting metaphor.
I just made that up in my head.
Oh, wow.
Whew.
And on a Friday afternoon,
Yeah,
nevertheless.
some collagen straight from my brain.
Look at that. So, you know, Sadé, you're pretty skeptical at this point of Dale. What do you think when she says I love you and he says I'm falling in love with you?
Yeah, so it seems like he gets the gamification of this. I think he likes her, but I don't think he was as all in as she was. And he didn't want to like mess things up. So he's just like, yes, this is fine.
What do you think, Danielle? I feel like you're doing a lot of the question asking.
Yeah, I don't know. So like I kept bouncing back and forth with how I felt. I was having a hard time reading Dale. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I think that maybe he's just not as into her. But then I'm like, maybe he is just like nervous, or maybe he's more introverted or laid back. And so I was having a hard time reading it. At this point, I think I was really concerned that he was just not as into her as she was. But I do think that by the very end, I think that he might be there.
So do we want some extra credit?
Sure.
I'm ready.
All right.
Equitability in relationships. So this is kind of what we're talking about with the relationship. Is he into it as much as she is? And what we know from research is that people who are the happiest in their relationships have a similar level of equitability. So that means that I am giving as much as you get. So when I teach about this in class, there's that Michael Bublé song where he says, I'll promise that I'll give so much more than I get. And I always remind students that that is not a good model for a relationship. So listen to your Michael Bublé Christmas albums, but when it comes to love, don't listen to Michael Bublé. He's way off base. You are best off being with somebody who puts in as much as you put in, and they receive as much as you receive. And so what makes us uncomfortable, and I think we all know that, it's harder to see when you're in the relationship because you feel like you can make it, you know, you can get the person to be equitable, but everyone on the outside kind of inherently understands that this might not be equitable. And I think that's what we're saying. And I also, Danielle and I were texting back and forth about this last night. I think he's into her. I just think everything he does comes off as like just very laid back, and she's much less laid back. And so it's more of a, like the two of them are clashing in how they present that. And that's a different kind of conversation, you know, the kind of back to that love languages and what we talked about. But one more side note, the best personality predictors in a happy relationship, if we're thinking about, are these guys going to work out? neuroticism. So people who are lower in neuroticism, both of them, tend to be happier. People who are higher in self-esteem. So you're really successful if you have two people who have high self-esteem, because you have much less arguments. There's much less of this like, do you love me? You know, they kind of trust that their person loves them. And then people who are happier than average to start, which makes sense, right? So
you got to take care of yourself.
got to
is what
take care of
I'm hearing.
yourself. Yeah. People don't like to be, they like to be emotional support when people need them. They don't like to be the emotional soul keeper for the whole relationship all the time, every day.
That was some good extra credit, Bill.
Thanks.
So let's get back to the guys. We haven't talked about them in a little while. So these poor guys, they'll get swept away, right? And he's been gone all night. How would you feel if you were them?
It depends. Go ahead. Someone else go first. I feel like I'm talking the most. And
Okay. Well, again, new to Bachelor Nation, they're fully aware like someone has to win in this. Like this, and that's one thing that kind of I didn't. No, I guess we'll get into it later. But just the entitlement of like, well, she's not giving me equal time. You have to like earn that time. You don't. She doesn't have to give it to you. If she likes someone more, that's the goal of the show. So intellectually, I'd be like, well, I think this is how this works. But I guess like I'd be a little like burned because it's like I know what's happening. I know what's going on in that fantasy suite. That somebody might be having sex with your wife.
Yeah. I mean, I think that would be, for me, I don't know if I could ever do this show because I'm just too monogamous, I guess. Like, I don't know if I could handle that. I don't think I could handle like someone else kissing on my person, let alone like fantasy suiting with my person. And so I think that it would take a certain mindset to just like walk into this situation to begin with. But yeah, I mean, I think at this point the guys kind of know, but like some of them like don't want to.
Yeah. Blake M and then was it Jason are
Yeah.
I just kind of want to be like, come on, guys. Like and also if we're gonna critique Claire for how quickly she fell in love with Dale, we have to critique those guys for how oddly they have bonded to her and like how bad this hit. Like they've had 3 hours of dates with her maybe, and she, by their admission, has shown them very little interest. Like, so at some point they're just not getting the hints either, right? And they are becoming borderline stalkerish. In my opinion.
Possessive, I would say.
Well, they don't have a chance to stalk her, but guaranteed if this was real life, they'd be on Facebook, like talking to themselves at 3 a.m. with a cigarette and a beer and like, how's she talking to that guy? I'm going to be friends with her friends so I can see the pictures.
Well, and I mean, I do think that he, like they know that they've probably had sex.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I mean, he didn't come back.
Right.
And I mean, I do think that a lot of the confusion though is like you were saying, Sadé, it's like the show does have sort of some set rules and they haven't been following them. Right. So the fantasy suite's not supposed to happen for like another month and a half. Like there's supposed to be 2 other guys that maybe get to have a fantasy suite too. There are supposed to be one-on-ones, and typically once somebody's had a one-on-one, they don't get another one. So it's like this weird space where you're like, this is kind of a game, but like the rules are somewhere in between real life rules where it's like, no, this person likes you, and then the rules of the Bachelor, right? So
I had an interesting hypothetical in my mind about it. So what we know from research, and this is a generalization, so before people tell me I'm overgeneral, I know this is a generalization, but if you look at the data, men tend to be much more affected by women physically cheating, and women tend to be much more affected by men emotionally cheating or their partner emotionally cheating. Men tend to be more affected by their partner physically cheating. And so I wonder if this had been The Bachelor, if there had been as much angst among female contestants around there in The Bachelor, you know, he didn't come home all night, if their concerns would be more like, you know, they're really bonding. And I have no idea if that's how it would work, but
Yeah. Yeah. So like they have their fantasy suite evening, and then Chris Harrison sits down with Claire and is like, next step, proposal. And you know, I really appreciate the Bachelor franchise's commitment to this narrative, right? You know, like, while everything is wild because it's 2020, they're like, nope, like you all had your fantasy suite. The next thing that comes is the proposal. So we're moving ahead with this.
we'll break some rules, but gosh darn it, Neil Lane is going to get a freaking diamond here.
Yep. We're going to blow up.
He may die from COVID, but that diamond will be here.
Absolutely. We're going to blow up The Bachelor, but we're also going to need you to propose before we do.
I feel like she had a bit of a like panic moment, realizing that like, oh, this is moving quickly. And I wonder if Dale had that moment. And at this point, he's like, it's just easier to go along with it. And maybe it works out. But research would suggest you do not do well if you feel forced into an engagement, because then there's feelings of resentment that underlie the engagement, and it becomes easy to blame maybe issues that every engaged couple has. It's easy to put that blame on the people, you know, on the feeling that you're forced into an engagement.
What do you think, Sadé?
When Claire and Dale were laying in bed after their night in the fantasy suite, and she's trying to like, you know, DTR or define the relationship.
Yes.
And the look on his face, it just smacks of PCC, post-coital clarity, where he's like, oh no.
I've done a horrible thing.
Yes, he's like, I can't undo this. And I think there he kind of decided, like, okay, this is fine, I guess. And I think from that point forward, he's like, okay, I'm just gonna commit.
Write it out.
Yeah, but his face when she's talking, like, what are we? Like, what is this? And he just like, oh my God.
PCC, I'm gonna use that again. I don't know when, but like I'll use that again. That's great. Yeah, I didn't, you know, one thing that I kept thinking about too is like, was Claire just like, hey, he's who I really like. I'm kind of am done with this process. But also like, oh, that means that we have to get married now. You know, like, I don't know that.
Yes.
Making one choice necessarily meant that you knew that you're going to have to make the other.
Yeah. I felt uncomfortable for him. I wondered if he was kind of like, oh, I didn't realize this was the, yeah.
Oh, I was sweating.
Yeah.
You know, so then she has to break up with the guys. And this is always like really weird to me because sometimes I'm like, you know, the Bachelor or the Bachelorette always gets really emotional about these breakups. And I'm like, but like, you like sat by this person for like 10 minutes one night. Like, I'm always like find that really interesting.
Right.
But so she has to break up with them, and she goes and she tells them that she's in love with Dale. What y'all think about that moment? You know, what'd you think? You know, Kenny saw clearly. He knew what was going on. He was like, she's not interested in us. She's gonna run away with Dale. So while like Jason and Blake were like holding on to hope, Kenny was like there with some hard truths. And you know, but was he right about the apology? Does she owe them an apology?
So I have two statements on this, and I don't think either one answers your question. But first off, they have been together. Point one, they have been together for like 3 hours or whatever. They are in total ghosting territory. Like, I would like, they would be well within their rights if this were real life. She would to just ghost them, right? This would be like first or second date, it's not working out. You find someone you like better, which happens a lot, and then you just like don't text the person back, right? And I think that would probably be appropriate right now. Maybe insensitive, but maybe appropriate on my end. Second, oh shoot, I forgot my second. Oh, her apology is not an apology. And this is a pet peeve of mine. When you say, this gets me worked up in life.
I like it.
If you say, if I hurt you, then I apologize. That is like I don't think I did, but I'll say this apology just for your sake. The way to apologize is to say, here's what I did. I understand it's wrong, and here's how I will improve it. And so if you're looking for ways to apologize in your relationships, to the 3 people listening to this, don't say, if I hurt you, and then try to explain why it wasn't wrong. That is not an apology.
Oh, Bill, I'm so sorry that you feel that way.
Yeah.
Oh, that's my pet peeve. Like, oh, I'm sorry for how you feel.
Yeah, if you feel that way.
And you're like,
That's
no, like that you need quit turning this about me. You got to own your own stuff.
Well, and it's basically a way for you to say it's not my fault, but in a cloaked as an apology.
What do you think, Sadé?
Yeah.
I agree that she doesn't owe anyone anything. And especially because I thought this had been going on for like a month. It's been a week. And they're like upended their lives. It seems like most of them are unemployed anyway. So like you got a free trip to Palm Springs, chill out. But then Kenny, he gives me the worst vibes. He seems like the scummiest scumbag to ever scum. And so I feel like he's done way worse to women. So I'm like, I don't care what happens to you, Kenny. You're bad.
I am like a razor thin between thinking Kenny is kind of some type of like Buddha that we all need to listen to, like cloaked as a sleazy boy band guy, and just thinking he must be just a total tool bag. And I haven't decided where I've come down on him. But
also,
I appreciated that he was just like, I'm done with this. Like, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I think he was right in noting, like, I don't think she's into this. Because, yes, absolutely. But also, what is a boy band manager in 2020? Does he just DM people on SoundCloud? Like, it's not a job.
Oh my gosh.
What's more of a job? Boy band manager or former football player?
There are several former football players.
So we'll get to this part, but when they basically told him you can stay if you want, and they're like, well, this is a big decision. It's like, what do you got to get back to your former football career? Like, I'm sure the boy band that you manage, Kenny, will continue not to sell albums for 3 more weeks.
Oh,
Real people with real jobs, except for the anesthesiologist. I can't think of his name.
Oh, is it Joe?
I got my sheet. I think so.
It might. Yes,
Joe.
I think Joe.
Yeah. Joe has a real job. The male grooming specialist has a real job. Like, those balls ain't going to be waxed unless he's there. Former football player, boy band manager, several others. Okay, I'm done.
Healthcare salesman.
Huh?
Healthcare salesman.
Healthcare salesman. The coffees, the afternoon coffees hit me. I'm raging.
Yeah, no, I hate Kenny, but he is right in assessing she was completely disinterested from jump.
Yeah.
So this has us skipping a little bit over the proposal, so we can get back to that. But since we're talking about it, they learn your journey's not over. They're engaged, but your journey's not over, and they do have to make this decision about whether they'll stay or go. So we all have consensus that they don't have much to go back to. But that being said, do you think that they should all be staying? who is there anyone that you think should have left, or it's that this is going to become a big problem as it moves on with Tayshia?
I think that the promo seemed to be like, and the guys might have problems. I just feel like once they see Tayshia, it's going to be like all the problems are gone. And I'm worried for Dale that he's like sitting somewhere and being like, what? I didn't realize it was her. Like, like I don't know. I feel like what you see, and Danielle actually asked me this, is there research on like desired length between relationships? So really it's up to how long you've been with the person, but more what your emotional connection was with them, what your personality is, things like that. So if you've been with someone for 6 years, your families are probably kind of intertwined a little bit. So you're breaking up with their family members too. Maybe you know them, maybe you like them, maybe you live in a community where you see them a lot. You're going to have to deal with that. These guys, like, I mean, they can say that they're really invested, but I have a feeling in 2 days, they'll just totally forget about her and be on to Tayshia. That's my thought on it.
Yeah, I can't remember who it was. It might have been Mike, who was just like, "But what if I'm not? What if she's not hot?" I was just like, "Go home, Mike." Like, they're not gonna just find some homely woman that was just hanging around.
Yeah, he said, "What if I'm not physically attracted to her?"
Oh my god. I'm like, yes, but do you think they would choose that person? Like,
has there ever been a not attractive bachelor or bachelorette? I think I might have asked that last week. Has there ever been one that you were just like, couldn't do it? I don't think so. There's been like varying levels, but there's never been one that I've just been like, wow, they're really scraping the bottle or the bottom of the barrel, or like really makes up for it with their humor, or
oh my god, that's the one thing about this show that
really
was
nice.
hard to get through. A bunch of guys who think they're funny or supposed to be funny. That was a nightmare. Like their first introductions.
Oh,
Oh.
are we gonna get that again? Do you think?
I hope. God, I hope. I hope they break back out the suits of armor, the pregnant suit. I think they're going to bring more guys back too.
I was wondering that too. Or like the guys who got sent home, do they get another shot?
I wonder if there's like new guys that they're bringing in, like guys that didn't make the cut for this show. They were like, which is going to be a really fun dynamic, because then you've got this like community that's been built. You've got outsiders coming in. It's like two teams. Danielle, do you have a metaphor?
Well, okay. So a couple of weeks ago.
Wait, is this extra credit?
This is extra credit.
Yeah.
This might just be credit this week, not extra credit.
No, this is going to be good. I've been waiting.
No. So a couple of weeks ago, as I had this on, Ryan was like, Danielle, I can't believe all the sports metaphors the guys are talking in. And I was like, what are you talking about? And of course, like we do know that we have a lot of sports metaphors for like, physical intimacy, first base, second base, like whatever. So there are a lot of ways that we have that. And sort of like, as you have alluded to this, Sadé, like there's like this gamification of The Bachelor, right? That it is a competition, but at the same time, I think that there's a lot of ways that the show works to deny that. And so I was really struck by this. Oh, I can't wait for the new Bachelorette, because we'll have this like equal playing field.
Yes.
Idea that like people, her researching Dale or potentially talking to him before the show began was like breaking the rules. And it's this really interesting. So I just got to thinking, and I was hoping to have some time to do research, and I didn't quite get there, but I'll look it up for you all to sort of look at the way that we use sports metaphors to talk about relationships, and like, is that really a healthy metaphor, right? I'm thinking about the election right now and the idea of like thinking about it. Like elections aren't a basketball game.
Right.
Things don't flip. You're just counting votes.
Yeah,
And at
they
the
keep
end,
using,
there's a result.
yeah.
So this idea that we use these metaphors, though, shapes the way that we think about it, so that we do think about it as flipping back and forth, or like same with relationships and like this, like, yes, it's a show, but like, is it really a game? Like, are you really competing? Or, I don't know. But I think that we have that sort of language to discuss relationships outside of The Bachelor, right? And like, what does it mean to sort of view relationships, through sports metaphors? And so I don't have anything all that smart to say about it right now, but I can say that it's happening, and I think that it matters, and it shifts the way that we think about things.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll do some research. Sade, do you know?
Well, I thought about the sports metaphor in relation to like how men talk to each other. That's something that's been fascinating to me recently, where I'm like, I have no idea like what men think about themselves, what men think about love, and how they communicate those things. And so it seems like those sports metaphors are an easy way to like reveal things without it being personal, without it being intimate, especially like for, I think it's Jason C and Blake, who seem to be like the most affected by the proposal occurring. Blake really just needed a hug. He really needed just like a cry, and he could not do that. And so like they all got really unified in anger, but like clearly they just wanted to like be able to feel something, and they could not do it in front of a bunch of other guys. And that was like a really sad thing to me.
I loved that like shot, that really dramatic shot of like the three guys like walking together. And towards the end, it was very dramatic, but I think it did, kind of what you're talking about, like, oh, we're gonna do this together. And then, they're worried, oh, Jason, we didn't know if you show up. I worry about Jason because he like not only lost his girlfriend, but he lost his therapist.
I feel like she opened Pandora's box with Jason. Like she made him feel, and now he has no way to put the feelings back in the box, and he's just feeling things that he doesn't know how to deal with. Like I said, like last week, I feel like some of them had, if you're going through like the stages of death, some of them had reached acceptance. Blake's probably at bargaining or denial. It's like Jason is still at freaking anger. Like he's like, you can tell he wants to put his fist through the drywall. He wants to like.
Yeah, I worry about Jason. But Sade, I think that I love your point, that they might use sports as a way to create bonding and to connect when they're trying to discuss more intimate things. So it allows them sort of to engage in intimacy without necessarily using the intimate language to get there. And I think that that's really perceptive. So let's talk. I want to talk about the proposal. Were you moved?
No.
No. I cried. I love it when people fall in love. Like I'm like am one of those people that like I don't know that I'll cry at a funeral, but at a wedding, like I'm that like weepy person. I was really happy for Clare.
I thought like the proposal was whatever. Their interaction after was awkward, where they were like talking about the ring, and I mean you could just tell that they're very new in their relationship, and they are now very much intertwined with each other. Maybe that's why I sometimes get weird about like engagements, because it's basically saying we are now going to get married, and it puts something on a relationship that it's like, you're together. And so I feel like, yeah, people should think long and hard about engagements, and know like not think of them as like the next step, but like as a precursor to being married, because it puts a whole set of expectations in there. And this isn't even including their family, right? So I don't know if you all experienced this, but when I was like dating my wife, I had a lot of questions about when are you going to marry her? When are you going to get engaged? When are you going to propose? And it got to where it was just like when I did it, I was like, oh, the questions will stop. No, the questions were, when's the wedding? When are you going to have kids?
Yeah.
Are you going to put both your names on the mortgage? She going to take your last name? Like it never stops. And it just becomes increasing like commitment from people on the outside.
That was a thing that was very weird to me when, like after the proposal, and she's like, "I like the sound of Claire Moss." I'm like, "You're just gonna give up your name?
Boom.
Like,
Yep.
you had this for 39 years, and it's like this the tie to your family that you're so close with that you're like, whatever, Crawley who, like Claire Moss." That was shocking to me.
Can I tell a story? One of the most proud things I've had happen to me in the last few months. So my wife and I don't have the same last name because she's published a ton. Look her up, Dr. Eschball. And so I teach a professional practice class. And one of the things I talk about is when you interact with a potential job, you should make sure you call somebody by the name they want to be called. So she is not Mrs. Henniger, my last name. She's not Mrs. Eschball. She's Dr. Eschball. Should make sure you do that. So one of our former students got married, sent him a present, went there, and when they sent the card back, they wrote it to Elaine Eschball and Bill Henniger. And so they remembered, and it's like it restored my faith in my students that they actually listened to one thing that I said.
So my in-laws, so it would be my husband's grandpa. He has been passed for several years now. But he would refuse to write checks to his daughter. Like he would write all of the checks. So it'd be like a birthday gift to Coral, but it'd be written to Denny McHugh. Sexism.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I kind of did feel like it was a little bit awkward afterwards too. You're sort of like, oh, we just did this really big thing. And then it's like, so I guess we're going to keep hanging out at this hotel.
I know nothing about you except that both our parents hitchhiked.
So how excited are you all for Tayshia?
I think it's gonna introduce a lot of like, I hope the transition period isn't that difficult. But yeah, it seems like you have two sets of people who are like, she's like, oh wait, I'm the second choice, and they're like, oh, we're the runner-ups. So that seems either like they can get through it together, or it's going to cast like a call over the rest of the season.
I'm excited. I really, really like Tayshia. So I liked her was she on Colton's season? Do you remember? Yeah. So I liked her on Colton's season, and then I loved her on Bachelor in Paradise.
Like I said, she's one of the few people to come out of Bachelor in Paradise where you were like, she's a normal person. And like, I could get along. Normally they come out of Bachelor in Paradise and you're like, wow, they are not as well liked. Like they're not the person I thought they were.
She is a very normal person, and she did come out of that, but she also spent a lot of time with JPJ, and he is a character. And I think that on one hand, I loved that she was making out with him because he's a goofball. I mean, he had some bad moments on that show, but they seem so different. So I think there's something curious about her. The fact that, because I was like, was she just trying to stay on the show? But I think that she's maybe attracted to people that you wouldn't expect. And so I think that we're going to see her connecting with someone that will be like, really?
I like a good train wreck. It's my, I like conflict in relationships as long as it's not mine. I mean, that's obviously what I do research on, and it's what fascinates me. So I'm excited just because like there's dynamics that have never been there. There might be a second group, an out group, and an in group. There's probably it's gonna be good. I am pumped.
So if you have your takeaway, what's your takeaway for this week?
One sentence takeaway.
Yeah.
The queen is gone. Long live the queen. Which is what they used to say about like kings and queens in England when they would die. Like, the king is dead. Long live the king. Claire's gone. We got a new one.
Don't hesitate on what you want. Like, don't waste time. It would have been so easy for her to like weirdly go through the motions for months, but it would be really dumb. Everyone would be miserable. So yeah, go for what you want.
I like that. I would, my takeaway is make sure you apologize correctly.
There you go. I like it.
It's been a long week.
It has been a long week. And I don't even have to say, tell people to vote. You're not going to hear that. I'm not going to tell you guys to vote. What's the last word? I'm just going to stop here. Who wants to end this?
Dun, dun, dun.
I feel like our guest should end it. Do you have something to plug? Do you have something, words of wisdom? An enemy you want to like take down right before we leave? At least 10 people will hear this. So
10 people.
Our last one, we got 60 some listens on Apple or on the podcast, and then we had 120 views on YouTube. So did you hear that, Walgreens? We're waiting for the sponsorship.
I guess I don't have anything to plug. Believe it or not, this is my only podcast.
Your
yes.
first podcast.
Yes, this is my first.
Yep.
Is there a name for someone that's like a new podcaster? Like, we should come up with a word. Like, a baby pod. I don't know.
This is pod virgin, but yeah.
I'm fine with being the pod baby. But yeah, I guess everybody wash your hands. Be patient.
Mask up.
That's good. Wash your hands, be patient, mask up. We'll see you next week, y'all.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Batchademia with your hosts, Doctors Danielle Dick McGew and Bill Henniger. All opinions expressed on this show are solely the opinion of the person who spoke them. If you like our podcast, please consider following us, leaving us a 5-star rating, and a positive review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Also, please share with your friends, family, and other ardent Bachelor content lovers. If you have comments or questions you would like us to address on the show, you can email us at batchademia@gmail.com or on the Twitter with the handle @batchademia. Thanks for listening.